I'm going to tell you the story of the Greenbrier ghost. It's the only recorded ghost in history that has been allowed to have evidence put in court. There was a man named Edward. His real name was Erasmus, but he went by Edward, and his friends called him Trout. He moved from one part of town to another to Greenbrier, and he soon found a job as a blacksmith, fell in love with a girl named Elva Zona, and they, shortly after getting married, it wasn't long, Edward went across the street to go visit his aunt and asked the aunt's son to go back to his house to see if his wife needed help cleaning. The poor son found the woman dead at the bottom of the stairs. Before the coroner could get there, or the doctor, Edward hurried home and he cleaned up the body, and he washed it, dressed her, and put a high-collared dress on her and a scarf around her neck that didn't match, but he swore up and down that was her favorite scarf. The mom, Mary Jane, knew something was off. Something just didn't feel right to her, didn't sit right. Maybe had nothing to do with Edward's name being called Trout, but she just felt something was off. A mother's instinct is usually always right. The mother, Mary Jane, went down to the prosecuting attorney and said she wanted it investigated. Something just didn't feel right about what was going on. The prosecuting attorney thought she was just a grieving mother who lost her daughter and wanted someone to blame. But then as he looked in the records, they realized there really wasn't an autopsy of any kind done on poor Elva. While this was going on, Elva came back after the mother had prayed several prayers. She came back for 4 nights in a row to explain to her mother how she was killed, how her husband had a violent temper, and on the last night he snapped her neck. And Elva apparently turned her head completely around to show how broken her neck was. It was all because she hadn't served meat on the table to her husband, and it threw him into a fit of rage. So there was an autopsy done, and they found the husband was okay at the beginning when Elva's body was exhumed. But the closer that they got to her neck and to her head, he became fidgety and he wanted it to stop. But they found her neck was fractured at the first and second vertebrae precisely where the spirit said. The coroner's inquest was held on March 1st, 1897. Edward's trial began on June 30th of that same year. He hired a defense lawyers William Reekler and James Gardner. Apparently, James Gardner was the first black lawyer to practice in a circuit court in the state. They also found out that not only had Edward been a horse thief, but Zona was his 3rd wife. The first one left because he beat her. The second one, Lucy Ann Tritt, died suddenly, even after they had a child named Lonnie Walter, who was born in 1891. After about an hour and 10 minutes of deliberations, the mother's testimony in court, they found Edward guilty of murdering his wife. The judge wasn't really too fond of this. Again, we're talking about a ghost. He was found guilty and was sentenced to life in prison. On March 13, 1900, Edward died in the West Virginia State Penitentiary at the age of 39. Mary Jane stopped believing her daughter visiting her after her death because she was able to tell her tale of the story of what happened. September of 1916, Elva's mother, Mary Jane, had passed away. No further sightings of Elva have been reported. Still, Elva is one of the most beloved ghosts of West Virginia to this day.